Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to Truly Sinister. I'm Wendy, and tonight we're going to finish the amended motion or the amended complaint by the Haas defendants. So stay tuned. Welcome back. So I hope everybody's, what is today? Wednesday is going good. It is Wednesday, June 10th, 2026, and it's hot as hell. I feel very productive today, though. I mowed the lawns, walked the dogs, worked out, and we're going to have issues with the fucking internet again. Vacuumed, did laundry. I mean, you name it, it feels like I did it today. All because I have to go back to my job tomorrow night for my 4-night stretch of 12-hour shifts. So I don't get much done on those days other than working out and walking the dogs. Before we get started, I realized that I made a video about Mickey Steins, the sheriff from Kentucky that shot the judge in the judge's chambers. They had a hearing on Friday, I believe, and they're very quiet about when those hearings are. They just kind of happen. And I just happened to come across the hearing in progress on Friday, and I watched it. I wasn't anywhere where I could stream it, otherwise I would have. I watched it, and I tell you what, talk about small town, small county. They have like just a folding chair in front of, no, not even a, well, they did have a chair in front of the judge's desk, or the bench, but they actually had the witnesses standing at a podium in the middle of the courtroom. It was really odd. And the attorneys are on opposite sides of the courtroom, and I think they're folding tables. It was just, and they had pews for the gallery, and the gallery seemed to have a lot of room, although one side of the gallery will probably be for the jury when the trial starts. But it was a packed courtroom. The hearing supposedly was for Mickey Stein's mental capacity. Is he is he fit to stand trial? And the defense is also asking for bail, for him to be let out on bail. So they called some witnesses on his behalf for the bail part of it. The prosecution they did one psychiatric eval already, and they got the results. They didn't share the results, but they are asking the judge if they can do another one. So that tells me that they didn't get the results that they were hoping for, and now they're going to try and do it again and maybe get the results, the first time doesn't try, let's try twice. I don't know. So the judge is going to rule on both of those things. He didn't say when, so I've been watching for it, and I haven't seen any kind of ruling yet. But yeah, they're very, very tight-lipped about the hearings. They don't announce them ahead of time. They just kind of happen. That's like the second or third time that's happened. So it's kind of frustrating. I realize that it's a big publicized case. It's not every day that a judge gets shot by a sheriff in the judge's chambers on camera. But they've got to expect that it's going to be a huge headlining case, and they're going to have all eyes on him. So they might as well make this stuff available and announce it ahead of time so that there's not, a bunch of bullshit going on in the process, because they're worried about they want to change the venue because the Commonwealth is worried that they won't get a fair trial. Not that Mickey won't get a fair trial, but they won't get a fair trial, which is odd. I mean, the first time I ever heard about the Commonwealth getting a fair trial and how they have the right to a fair trial was in the Karen Read, one or both of the Karen Read trials, when she was on trial for murder of her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. So, yeah, I was like, okay, you're not worried about him getting it. So that tells me that the public is rallying behind Mickey Steins. And that's because Mickey Steins wants to keep it there in his hometown. He doesn't want to change the venue. And so it's telling me, and they said that, this case has split the town in half, or the county in half, which I believe. But I don't think it's in half. I think the majority of the people are behind Mickey Steins. So I don't know what was going on with Judge Mullins, but obviously there was something going on, because there's a lot of people that are, rooting for Mickey Steins. And the Commonwealth knows that, and they want to change venue. So anyway, I was going to do a short video on that, showing some clips from the hearing, and I still probably sure what's going on, but it's fucking annoying. Okay, so we're gonna pick up where we left off with the motion, or the amended complaint. Whoops. Just 1 second. Okay. Okay. D. The trial of Karen Read. Number 87. Read's first trial began with jury selection on April 16th, 2024. Kearney took to his live stream on April 17th and wondered, quote, if they can find jurors that aren't tainted already, end quote, because Turtleboy is everywhere. He proceeded to claim that they, quote, can't find a jury in the United States of America anywhere, any county, anywhere, end quote, because Turtleboy is too big. On April 20th, 2024, Kearney interviewed an excused juror who had previously engaged with his content and had been a member of his Facebook group. She explained that when she arrived for jury duty, she saw free Karen Read signs all along the street and people wearing pink in support of Karen Read, and that she could hear the protesters inside the courthouse. She also said that everyone in the room said that they had previously heard about the case. Well, no kidding. During the same live stream, Kearney played a clip covering the courthouse from Court TV. He proceeded to verbally attack the host, who expressed dissatisfaction with the conduct of Kearney and his followers, claiming it was disgraceful. Her as I should, because I'm normal. I'm a rational person. Any rational person hates Jennifer McCabe and is disgusted by her because Jennifer McCabe is a pig. She's a pig. She's a cop-killing pig, end quote. He proceeded to mock the Court TV host again, saying, quote, she supports a cop-killing pig like Jennifer McCabe, who Googled how long to die in the cold, end quote. During her first criminal trial in 2024, Read had documentary filmmaker Terry Dunn Muir record her preparation for trial. including interviews with Read, her attorneys, her family, and recordings of conversations between and among Read and her counsel. During these interviews, Read personally and her counsel on her behalf defamed the plaintiffs. I remember this. They were following her around for a documentary, and they ended up screwing her over at the end. So I'm not sure what came of the documentary. I don't know if they're still going to put it out or what, but they fucked her over in the end. So yeah. 92, on April 12, 2024, Jackson verified to Muir and her production assistants the statement Read gave to police when she was arrested in June 2022 that, quote, Brian Albert, Colin Albert beat up John. My taillight was cracked when John was pulverized, end quote. Read was present during Jackson's recorded statement and did not deny that she said those things. She didn't. She said, we're all in on the same joke, right? Brian Albert and Colin Albert beat John up. My taillight was cracked and John was pulverized. And they have her on body camera saying that. And why would she deny that? That's how she feels. 93, on or about April 30th, 2024, Read gave a series of personal interviews to Ms. Muir in connection with the documentary that Muir was filming. During that interview, Read falsely stated, quote, Jen McCabe got herself into a bad mess that night and she helped clean it up. I don't think Jen laid a finger on John, but Jen knew John was dying and she helped expedite it. So she's a first-degree murderer and she knows she is. But it was probably accidental when he came... See, that's what I'm saying. It was probably accidental when he became severely injured, and they, referring to the plaintiffs, just finished him off. I don't even know that they finished him off. I think they just put him outside. During the same interview, Read falsely stated, referring to, among others, the plaintiffs, quote, they're being federally investigated and they know it. They know they killed John, end quote. During the same interview, Read was asked what she thought of Kearney's tactics that had resulted in criminal charges against him for witness intimidation. Read responded in part by referring to the plaintiffs and falsely stating, quote, it's impossible for me to have any sympathy for any of these witnesses. They're murderers and they know it, end quote. On June 15, 2024, Read gave a recorded statement to Muir and her team that Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, and Colin Albert had a motive to kill O'Keefe, but she was not sure of the circumstances in which they did kill him. She said, what I think may have happened if the Higgins motive is the motive for what happened to John, or if it's combined Higgins and Colin Albert, who I think is the biggest hothead of the whole group, I think Higgins could have shared with Brian Albert what happened between Higgins and me, and Brian Albert used that as another reason not to like John O'Keefe. So Brian Albert has his friend Brian Higgins and his beloved nephew Colin Albert coming to him saying, John O'Keefe's a pain in my ass. There's enough motive to go around. I know that Brian Albert did not care for John on his own. I know that Colin Albert had issues that I witnessed with John. So it could have been as simple as everyone was drunk and John got mouthy with Colin and, caught an uppercut and just it escalated from there, end quote. Okay, now what's going on? Just 1 second. I don't know why it's not sharing again. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay. Number 97. On June 22nd, 2024, Read stated in an interview with Muir that, quote, I know Brian Higgins had a role in helping kill him. Help him get him in the snow and help frame me. But I don't think Higgins necessarily would have wanted to really hurt John. I think Brian Albert and Colin Albert would have enjoyed roughing John up, end quote. Further, during the interview, Muir asked Read, quote, you make such strong statements about, I think Colin Albert killed him. I don't know how without getting sued because I don't even know if I hope we're going to be able to use some of that because it's public record what you said, end quote. Read responded, quote, if Colin can prove that I'm lying and this is defamatory, he can sue me, end quote. Good for her. Read made these false statements about Jennifer McCabe, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins' involvement in the death of O'Keefe, even though she knew that she was responsible for O'Keefe's death when she struck O'Keefe with her car while backing up at a high rate of speed just after 12:30 a.m. January 29, 2022, a fact she admitted several times on January 29, 2022. Okay, except that she was walking into John's garage at 12:30, was it 12:36 a.m.? How could she be running him over just after 12:30? It's not possible. Plus, the science says that John was not hit with a car and John did not hit her car. Her car was not hit by a body and John's body was not hit by her car. Read also knew that Jennifer McCabe, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins had nothing to do with O'Keefe's death. Knowing that her statements were likely to be disseminated to a mass audience, Read defamed the plaintiffs in this manner in order to discredit them and deflect responsibility from herself. Do you have proof that you didn't do it? Because she has proof that she didn't do it. Do you have proof that you didn't do it? That's what I would say. That's what I would, if I was Karen, that's what I would ask them. I have proof that I didn't do it. I have scientific proof. Do you have scientific proof that you didn't do it? Because I do. And we've all seen it. On May 17, 2024, following the first day of McCabe's trial testimony, Kearney posted to X that McCabe was a quote-unquote psychopath and that she, quote, knew exactly where O'Keefe was, dying in the cold on Brian Albert's front lawn. She plotted to put him there, end quote. On May 21, 2024, I'm not reading the footnotes because all they're doing is telling us what episode he said this on, or what post on X that he said this in. So it's a waste of time to read the footnotes. On May 21, 2024, Kearney published part 354 of his Canton cover-up series, in which he summarized the testimony of the plaintiffs and claimed that the plaintiffs, quote, lied their way through, end quote, their testimony. He claimed that, quote, they all have nearly identical, well-rehearsed stories, end quote, which they did. Everybody arrived around 12:10 or left around 12:10. Nobody saw the body on the front lawn, even though it should have been there when they all walked by the front lawn when they left. Colin wasn't in the house. John never came in the house. I mean, it's just, everyone's story was exactly the same, and they all got caught in I'd say at least 2 to 3 lies during their testimony. All of them. Every single one of them got caught in lies. So why are you lying if you have nothing to hide? He claimed that they all have nearly identical, well-rehearsed stories, which, quote, isn't surprising because they've had 2 years to make sure they have them straight and their lives depend on the consistency, end quote. He also explained that, quote, all of the plaintiffs were caught in lies at some point during their testimony, end quote. Well, great minds think alike. On June 7, 2024, Kearney joined the Morning Club YouTube channel to discuss the Read trial. After being praised for, quote, literally creating all of the fanfare surrounding Read's trial, Kearney touted that people believed in response to Kearney's coverage of the case that the plaintiffs engaged in, quote, a legitimate cover-up and a framing of an innocent woman in order to protect some of the most unlikable people ever. Like, it's not like they're trying to cover up and protect likable, nice people. Like, they are protecting Jennifer McCabe, who nobody likes. She's like a Disney villain. She's so bad. And, like, you're protecting her of all people, end quote. On June 22nd, 2024, Kearney hosted his weekend live show as Read's defense team began presenting their case. During the show, Kearney directed, they weren't beginning to present her case yet because his live show is on Or maybe it's his weekend live shows on Saturday night. So they didn't begin presenting their case then because it was a Saturday. Whatever. During the show, Kearney directed comments towards a member of the Albert family and said, quote, "Your family murdered a cop, a human being, and then they covered it up. Then they blamed an innocent woman. This is not an opinion. It is a fact. It is an undeniable fact. The bigger injustice is that John O'Keefe was murdered by the McAlberts and left outside to die," end quote. In March 2025, HBO released a 5-part docuseries covering Karen Read's first trial in depth, which featured interviews with Read, Jackson, and Yannetti filmed during Read's first trial. Episode 2 features the relationship that developed between Read and Kearney before and during trial. Yannetti admitted that they wanted media coverage of her case, and rightfully so. Why wouldn't he? He wants it out there, what's going on. Initially, there was no coverage, but according to Yannetti, quote, "The Karen Read case really started to blow up when Turtleboy started shining a light on Karen's innocence," end quote. Yannetti, they had every right to do the same thing for their side. They just chose not to because they didn't have any facts to back them up. Yannetti did not disclose that it was Read and her team who recruited Kearney to disseminate Read's false statements. Read admitted that her lawyer said that she could provide information to Kearney so long as it was public, but advised her not to speak with him directly. Nevertheless, she said she, quote, "got nervous about who she was using as a third party," end quote. So she ended up developing a direct relationship with Kearney herself. They, quote, "started talking about the case probably once a day, 5 to 6 days a week," end quote. Read, however, failed to disclose to HBO that her attorneys on her behalf were directly communicating with Kearney at the outset of the defamation scheme. Who gives a shit? They don't have to disclose that to HBO. It's none of their business. In the same they seem to think that this is all against the law or something, and it's not. In the same HBO series, one of Kearney's followers admitted that Kearney had spurred them to take public action. Another admitted that, quote, "Turtleboy was the reason there were people outside the courthouse every single day." Okay. Great. Because he brought it to people's attention and they felt motivated to go and back this innocent woman. He didn't make them go. People have minds of their own. They can do their own thinking. The documentary features footage of Kearney conceding that his purpose in canvassing the communities and creating a daily courthouse presence was to affect the jury pool. Kearney's followers were so incendiary that the judge created a 200-foot buffer zone around the courthouse and ordered that no one carry any signs or wear clothing with the intent to influence what was happening inside during the trial. Nevertheless, Kearney's followers, report. The run-up to Read's retrial. On July 1, 2024, a mistrial was declared in Read's first trial after 8 jurors decided that Read was guilty of manslaughter, but 4 jurors disagreed. Okay, so, they got their facts mixed up because the judge didn't create a 200-foot buffer zone until the second trial, right? Because they were all standing around the courthouse when she was walking into the courthouse during the first trial. So the whole buffer zone and no one carrying signs or wearing clothing, pink clothing or whatever, was the second trial. And they haven't even gotten there yet because here they're coming up to the retrial. They have their facts fucked up. Okay, on July 1, 2024, mistrial was declared in Read's first trial after 8 jurors decided that Read was guilty of manslaughter, but 4 jurors disagreed. Following the deadlock, the Commonwealth announced its intention to retry the case. Bad mistake. Kearney and Read persisted in their defamation campaign against the plaintiffs. For example, on July 22, 2024, Kearney hosted a live show from outside the courtroom during a pretrial hearing. The video, which is set outside the courthouse, depicts Kearney confronting a police officer who is directing Kearney away from an individual whom the court had restrained Kearney from contacting. No, the court restrained her from contacting. Aren't they talking about crusty panties? Kearney proceeded to harass other supporters of the O'Keefe family outside the courthouse by saying, quote, they're just supporting cop killers. They're supporting the cop killing McAlberts. That's what they're here to do. These are the cop killing McAlberts. These are the people supporting the cop killers who murdered John O'Keefe in cold blood. They murdered him. They murdered John O'Keefe in cold blood, end quote. He asked the bystanders, quote, are you proud to support cop killers like the McAlberts, end quote. He continued, quote, I didn't kill someone like Jed McCabe, Brian Albert, and they all did. I didn't kill anyone, but they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They murdered him. They murdered John O'Keefe in cold blood, end quote. On July 29, 2024, Kearney published part 382 of his Canton cover-up series. In this post, Kearney explained, quote, I've been fighting for justice for John for the last 15 months. I sacrificed my freedom for that. But because the O'Keefe family can't get over their hatred for Karen Read, and they have too much pride to admit that they've been conned by John's killers, they want me to rot in prison, end quote. Kearney also explained that the reason he faced witness intimidation charges was, quote, because I am standing up for justice for John, and because I have questioned the people who the evidence shows murdered John, end quote. On August 17, 2024, Kearney hosted his weekend live show on YouTube. In his show, Kearney discussed a documentary about Scott Peterson's involvement in Laci Peterson's murder in 2002. Kearney stated, quote, that's how I view the McAlberts, the same way those reporters view Scott Peterson. I view the McAlberts. I didn't view the McAlberts as witnesses. I view them as murderers because they are. Like they're fucking murderers. They put this in my charging document, so let me say it again in case I wasn't clear the first 1,000 times I've said it. The McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe. They did. The McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe because it wasn't Karen Read, end quote. On September 14, 2024, Kearney hosted his weekend live show. Kearney stated, quote, think of how much that cost the Commonwealth, all to protect Jennifer McCabe, all to protect her, a murderer. Let me be very clear about this in case I haven't a million fucking times. Jennifer McCabe is a murderer, like full stop. That's it. She's a murderer. She did it. She actively participated in the murder of John O'Keefe. I can't stress that enough. I'm begging them to sue me if it's not true. They haven't done it yet. She actively participated in the murder of John O'Keefe, end quote. On October 18, 2024, Read publicly acknowledged for the first time her long-standing relationship with Kearney. In an interview given to Dateline NBC, Read admitted to speaking with Kearney on the phone, quote, almost every day for like 20 minutes, end quote. So what? On November 4th, 2024, Kearney posted on his, nobody proofreads anything or what? Posted on his official X account a photo of Brian Albert and stated, quote, Brian Albert went out for lunch today at the Longwood Galleria in Boston. It didn't go the way he hoped. I'd share my thoughts on this. With what they did to John O'Keefe, this is going to be their life moving forward. Should have come out of the house, end quote. And what he's talking about is Brian Albert was at the food court at Longwood Galleria in Boston, and somebody shouted across the food court, "You're a murderer! You killed John O'Keefe," or something like that. Yeah. Or why didn't you come out of the house or something? Just totally drew attention to him. On January 20th, 2025, Kearney published part 466 of his Canton cover-up series. In response to a claim by one of McCabe's friends that she was harassed by a quote-unquote turtle rider, the name for Kearney's followers, in public, Kearney stated, the fact that Jennifer McCabe has to cover her face in public like this because everywhere she goes people immediately see her face and recognize her as a cop killer is a great thing, end quote. On April 24th, 2025, ABC released an episode of Impact, Nightline in anticipation of Read's retrial, which featured interviews with Read and Jackson. In it, Read's attorney, Jackson, stated, referring to the plaintiffs, quote, there are people in that house that are actually responsible for his death and who murdered him, and there are others in the house who are covering up that murder, end quote. Jackson also specifically refers to McCabe as being involved in a cover-up. Quote, something was going on with John laying in that snow in that front yard. That means that this was a cover-up. John was murdered inside that house. His body was placed outside, and Jennifer McCabe knows that, end quote. F. The retrial and acquittal of Karen Read. On April 1, 2025, the second trial of Karen Read began with jury selection. As part of that trial, the Commonwealth subpoenaed Kearney to provide testimony. On April 16, 2025, Kearney, through his counsel, informed the trial court that if the Commonwealth called him as a witness, Kearney would invoke his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. In support of that assertion, Kearney's counsel asked the court to take judicial notice of the, quote, 16 indictments against Kearney, end quote. Kearney was present in the courtroom when his counsel invoked the Fifth Amendment on his behalf. In contrast, the plaintiffs each testified under oath several times, including during the first trial of Karen Read. They didn't testify in the second trial, though, did they? Not one of them. Not one, except for Jennifer McCabe. The plaintiffs never invoked their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination in connection with any testimony or statement to law enforcement. On April, but you guys weren't being charged with multiple felonies at the time either. So why would he want to go on the stand and possibly incriminate himself? On April 23, 2025, O'Keefe's mother testified. Kearney reacted on a weekday live show by stating, quote, she's on the side of evil, end quote. He argued that O'Keefe's mother is, quote, proudly friends with the people who quite obviously killed her son. Like, if that were my mother and I was killed, my mother would be looking for answers. And she wouldn't be like, yeah, I'm just going to be easily manipulated. I mean, Jen McCabe is a master manipulator. She's real good at fooling stupid people. And she's very lucky that the guy she helped kill, John O'Keefe, was surrounded by a lot of stupid people. Like, there's a lot of stupid people in John's life, end quote. I remember all these statements that they're quoting because I watched every single one of his lives during the Karen Read ordeal persecution. On April 25th, 2025, Kearney took to X in response to a post claiming that the Free Karen Read movement should be ashamed of the way they treated O'Keefe's mother. She held her own, trust me. Kearney replied, quote, your friends murdered this woman's son. Every pain she's feeling right now is a direct result of the McGalberts and Brian Higgins murdering John O'Keefe. You proudly call these people friends. Nothing you say or think matters at all. Despite quite literally engaging in divisive language, Kearney later posted on X, quote, the idea that the Canton community is divided is a lie. The media spreads to make it sound like there are two equal competing sides to the Karen Read case. There is no divide. There's a vast majority who knows the McAlberts murdered John O'Keefe, end quote. That's how I feel. There wasn't a divide because a divide would lead you to believe that they're equal sides, and they were not equal sides by any stretch of the as far as California and Georgia. People stopped to take pictures with him, and people handed him money, to which he responded, quote, people just give me cash. It's nice, end quote. Read knew that her statements regarding McCabe and others, like the same type of statements that she fed to Kearney, were untrue and were intended to deflect from her own culpability. How many times are they going to say that? I mean, they've already said it, 5 times or more? During the retrial, the prosecution presented footage of an interview with Read and Yannetti. During the interview, Read acknowledged that she previously expressed concern to Yannetti that she was responsible for O'Keefe's death. Quote, and when I hired David Unetti, I asked him those questions. The night of January 29th, like, David, what if I ran his foot over, or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out, or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out, and David said, then yeah, you have some element of culpability. That's if that happened, though. She's not saying it did. Moreover, during the she's not going to go up there thinking that these people killed him. I mean, she thought they were friends of his. Why would that be the first thing she thought? Moreover, during the Commonwealth's closing argument, the Commonwealth showed a clip from an interview with Read in the HBO documentary. With a smirk on her face, Read explains, quote, the closest I must have said was, did I hit him? End quote. Or did I hit him? I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement is claiming I said it? End quote. On June 4th, 2025, Kearney posted a video recapping day 27 of the Read trial. In response to the testimony of Brian, quote, Lucky, end quote, Loughran, a plow driver who testified on the defense's behalf, Kearney said, quote, I run Canton. I'm the mayor of Canton. I'm the most powerful person in Canton. Lucky, you don't have to worry about them anymore. The big wolf is dead. I slayed them. The McCabes and the McAlberts are nothing, end quote. Referencing the McCabes and the Alberts, he continued, quote, they're pissing their pants every single day, counting down the days of their freedom, like Jennifer McCabe is every day. She's a free woman. She's grateful for her freedom because she knows that she's going to spend a significant amount of time in federal prison, and it's going to be glorious when that happens, end quote. And I'm still hoping it does. Defendants' defamation campaign continues after trial concludes. On June 18, 2025, immediately following the conclusion of the retrial, Kearney was interviewed by NBC 10 in Boston. During the interview, he said, quote, the people who murdered John O'Keefe are out there. They're the McCabes and the Alberts, and John O'Keefe went into their home and never came out of it alive. And they threw him on the lawn like trash, end quote. Number 126. When asked if he felt responsible for the verdict, Kearney explained that he was responsible for, quote, the social media aspect of it, end quote. He also explained that he'd, quote, like to think that some of the evidence that was presented to the jury in court was a result of his journalism and his influence and his activism online. He also applauded himself for conducting standouts, putting up billboards all over Norfolk County for free care and read, and making it impossible for people not to know about the case. Kearney was also asked, who killed John O'Keefe? To which he responded, the people inside Brian Albert's house, dude. I don't know who exactly delivered the fatal blow, but Brian Albert was in there. Colin Albert was in there. Brian Higgins was in there, and the dog was in there. And quite frankly, every single person inside that house who has remained silent is just as guilty as the people who delivered the fatal blows to John. They did it. That there were already over 10,000 people streaming the video. He hustled the listeners to subscribe to his page, and within the first 5 minutes, he had surpassed 143,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. 35 minutes into the program, Kearney explained that over 20,000 people were watching his live stream, and that it was the, quote, biggest show we've ever had, end quote. He explained that if they had a message that they wanted him to read aloud to everyone, they could donate to him using the link attached to the chat. And they, quote, could pay whatever amount of money they want, and they could write a message, end quote. For example, here we go again. For example, an individual by the name of Oksana sent him $150 to say, quote, you did it, Aidan. You did it. You stared down an entire system built on lies and corruption and intimidation, and you never blinked. Karen Read walks free, end quote. An individual named Allison sent him $10 to say, quote, I can't imagine the pride and emotion you felt seeing all your hard work come to fruition, end quote. During the same program, Kearney admitted that when the jurors came in after deliberating, but before announcing the verdict, 2 of the jurors looked to him and smiled at him. Kearney also admitted that he was invited to the celebration dinner with Read and her defense team after the verdict. I don't see anything wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about Read or her team talking to the journalists or the media. As long as it's public information that they're giving, it doesn't matter. I don't know why they're making such a big deal out of this. At the dinner, Kearney and Read posed for the picture below, mocking Colin Albert. Kearney then posted the photograph on X. He acknowledged that he and Read had spoken about recreating the picture with the same caption over 2 years prior. Well, that's the McAlbert salute. On November 2, 2025, Kearney hosted his weekend live show in which he reacted to a podcast that he had previously appeared on speaking about the Read case. In the podcast, Kearney admitted that he, quote, protected Karen Read, end quote, and that he lied to Boston Magazine about their relationship. He explained that Read's team did not want to be publicly associated with him. They wanted him to do the work of getting the story out there about what the McAlberts had done. He admitted that he understood it would be dangerous if her team were publicly tied to him, but that privately they praised him and they fully supported him. In the same video, Kearney also admitted that he approached McCabe in the past to ask her questions at the direct request of Read, Jackson, and Yannetti. On January 12th, 2026, Read participated in her first podcast interview since her criminal trial ended with rotten mango. That sentence is bad, poorly written. When asked, what do you think happened to John O'Keefe, Read responded that, quote, he entered the house at 34 Fairview and much sooner than later met his demise, end quote. She bluntly concluded that, quote, someone in that house killed John O'Keefe, end quote, referring to the plaintiffs. On April 16th, 2026, the plaintiffs filed this lawsuit. Shortly after being served with the complaint, Kearney reposted defamatory material concerning the plaintiffs that he had previously published. For example, on April 20th, 2026, Kearney reposted a third-party post that shared Kearney's Canton cover-up blog from April 20th, 2023, wherein Kearney falsely stated that the men inside of 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022 were involved in the actual killing of John O'Keefe, and that McCabe stood by their side and helped them cover up the crime. On May 9th, 2026, Kearney posted a live YouTube video encouraging his followers to attend and protest a fundraiser hosted by a supporter of the plaintiffs, and stated that the fundraiser was being held for the people that framed Karen Read for murder. And that, referring to, among others, the plaintiffs, they killed John O'Keefe. Kearney continued, the trolls are like, oh my God, he's doubling down, saying this and saying that. Of course I'm doubling down. You think I'm going to stop saying that these people killed John O'Keefe because you sued me? Why would I stop saying that? I believe it. I know it to be true. Well, as long as you believe in your heart that it's true, it's not defamation, for one. That's what the law says almost word for word. On May 17th, 2026, Kearney posted a live YouTube video fundraising for his defense fees. With Kearney regarding Read and her criminal case since at least April 2023. Yannetti admitted that the reason he needed to involve Kearney at that time was because he had previously contacted other media reporters who told Yannetti that this case is done. You couldn't get anybody to touch this case with a 10-foot pole. I bet you they're kicking themselves now for that. Yannetti, considering Kearney was making, what did he say, $30,000 to $40,000 a week during the trial? That's insane. Yannetti later urged Kearney's followers, not a week. Yannetti later urged Kearney's followers to donate to Kearney's cause. In the same fundraising video, Kearney stated that Read was framed for murder and that O'Keefe was killed inside 34 Fairview by some sort of combination of Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, the dog, and Colin Albert. That's what I believe, and I believe that Jennifer McCabe played a pretty big part in covering up that murder and murdering Officer O'Keefe as well. On May 24th, 2026, Kearney published a video on the platforms he controls in which he falsely stated Brian Albert was involved in a murder. Let me be very clear about that. Christopher Matei, because I know you're going to watch this clip and this motherfucker. Your clients, they're suing me. They were involved in covering up a murder. You signed up to defend cop killers. When I went to the Billerica lacrosse game in June of 2023 and I called them a cop killer, I was right. And I'm still right today. And you're a fucking joke. Wait, sorry. And you're a fucking joke, because that's what it is, a joke of a lawsuit. Doesn't fucking scare me. You don't scare me. None of you motherfuckers scare me. I have an army of people behind me who want the truth, and they know that I am the vessel to the truth. I bet you that lawyer Matei is probably kicking himself for taking this case. On May 26, 2026, Kearney published a video on the platforms he controls. During the video, Kearney recounted a conversation that he had with the attorney representing him in this lawsuit, Jeffrey Pyle. Kearney stated, quote, "Today we had our first day in court. I didn't go because you don't have to go to these civil ones. But the McAlberts did. Didn't see that one coming. It was my lawyer's first. And it was not streamed. There must be a video out there somewhere of it. But the McAlberts all showed up, and Attorney Pyle was like, it was his first time seeing them. He's like, they look like the mafia, how they rolled in there, like thugs. Like it's like a way to prove the point, jackasses." Yeah, they all sat in the back row with the smirks on their faces. They did look like mob. During that same video, Kearney stated that plaintiff's counsel had advised Attorney Pyle that Kearney was continuing to make defamatory statements about the plaintiffs even after the filing of this lawsuit. As he displayed a photo that included the plaintiffs, Kearney, referring to the death of John O'Keefe, stated, "That's the crew that did it." Like, do they think we're going to sue him? That's what Tuxbury told my lawyer today. He's like, your client's still talking about this. We might have to amend our complaint. Oh, no. Don't amend the complaint. It's the same shit I've always said. They did it. Of course they did it. And look what they're doing. They're amending their complaint. On May 27, 2026, so that's last month, Kearney published a video on the platforms he controls. During the video, Kearney made statements concerning the plaintiffs who had appeared in court in connection with his lawsuit the preceding day. Kearney stated, quote, "When you see these motherfuckers in court, doesn't it just make your blood boil? Seeing these motherfuckers in court? And think of what me and Karen Read did exposing these assholes together. When I go back and I read all our messages, it's like she couldn't have done shit without me. And I was a lot stronger with her, And these motherfuckers right here are so mad about that. They're so mad that we exposed who the fuck they are and what they did and what they've done and what they continue to do. We exposed that. And I took it, and I look at this, and I'm like, fuck the money. Like, it's about these people. It's about Chris Albert doesn't get to fucking win. And Brian Higgins and Brian Albert and Colin Albert and fucking Jen McCabe, they don't get to fucking win, end quote. May 28, 2026, Kearney published a video on the platforms he controls. Jesus Christ. During the video, Kearney made statements concerning the plaintiffs who had appeared in court in connection with this lawsuit earlier that week. During the video, Kearney criticized his audience members who had not attended the court proceeding to confront the plaintiffs. Referring to the plaintiffs, Kearney stated, quote, "There's the people that killed him. They're right there, right fucking there, walking around like nothing happened. What are you going to do about it, huh? You going to ask them anything? You going to talk to them? What are you going to do? I can't do anything. I'll go to jail if I say something. You could, but you choose not to. Why? Because you're cowards at the end of the day. You're just in this for the tailgating. You're not in this for being uncomfortable or making, people who committed horrific crimes uncomfortable," end quote. Well, they saw what happened to you, and they're not journalists, so they don't want to go to jail. Duh. On May 30th, 2026, Kearney published a video on the platforms he controls. In that video, recognizing that disseminating further statements accusing the plaintiffs of involvement in the death of O'Keefe would subject him to civil liability, he encouraged his followers to use coded language to spread that message. Kearney stated, quote, "What if we came up with some phrase that was code for the McAlberts killed John O'Keefe," end quote. Kearney then conceived coded language to further his false statements that the plaintiffs were involved in the death of O'Keefe, and his followers did the same at Kearney's encouragement. Just 1 second, I need to get a drink. Okay. H. The impact of Kearney and Read's conspiracy. I don't think they've proven that there's a conspiracy yet, but whatever. Every day since April 18th, 2023, when the defamation campaign began, the plaintiffs and their families have been harassed and tormented as a result of Kearney's and Read's unlawful conspiracy to defame them. The plaintiffs have become prisoners in their own communities, besieged by Kearney and others who have been duped by Kearney and Read to believe that the plaintiffs are murderers. Move. Defendant and Brian Albert moved right after all this came out. Defendants have deliberately employed these false narratives about O'Keefe's murder and the plaintiffs' families as part of a marketing scheme that has brought Kearney substantial personal income. Okay. Like they have nothing, like that was his main purpose of doing all this. Kearney has an audience of hundreds of thousands of followers. He has purposely published statements by other people who falsely assert that the plaintiffs are responsible. As a result of defendants' campaign, the plaintiffs have been forced to endure malicious and cruel abuse at the hands of ruthless and unscrupulous people. On a regular basis, the plaintiffs have faced physical confrontation and harassment at their personal residences, their places of business, and their children's extracurricular activities. The plaintiffs have also sustained a barrage of harassment and verbal assaults on social media. Throughout Read's trials, Kearney and his followers harassed the plaintiffs as they reported to court to serve as witnesses. Except that none of them were witnesses in the second trial except for Jen McCabe. She was the only one. So that's a lie. The harassment was so extreme that the judge ordered a buffer zone around the courthouse to protect those inside. Kearney and his followers chanted "cop killers" as the plaintiffs walked by and shouted "Free Karen Read" all day. It wasn't to protect the people inside. It was so they didn't influence the jury. These guys are such fucking liars. The plaintiffs have had to undertake efforts to protect themselves and their identities. Their families' places of business have been targeted, and Kearney has stalked them at their children's extracurricular activities, causing fear and emotional trauma to the plaintiffs and their families. Kearney admitted publicly that one of the goals of his false, outrageous, and defamatory statements about the plaintiffs was not only to portray the plaintiffs as those responsible for O'Keefe's murder, but also to taint the jury pool for Read's trial and to benefit financially from the publicity. I never once heard him say any of those things, but participate in any conspiracy to murder O'Keefe, did not engage in any cover-up of O'Keefe's death, and did not frame Read for murder. Read knew her statements were false because she was present when O'Keefe was struck by her vehicle, made multiple admissions to first responders that she hit O'Keefe, and acknowledged to her own attorney that she may have had, quote, some element of culpability, end quote, in O'Keefe's death. That's not what she said. She asked what if she clipped him and he fell and died in the snow, but that's because you wouldn't automatically think that his friends are going to kill him. So what else could have happened? These publications were not only individually defamatory, but also part of a continuous course of conduct starting in 2023 and continuing through today, stating, asserting, implying, and suggesting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of O'Keefe and engaged in a cover-up by, in part, framing Read for O'Keefe's death. The statements contained in Read's campaign of harassment and abuse constitute defamation per se. The harmful nature of the defamatory statements is self-evident. The defamatory statements implicate the plaintiffs in heinous criminal conduct. False implications of criminal conduct constitute classic defamation per se. Okay, well, that's what they're doing to her. I don't get how that's not defamation for her then. Read's statements were of and concerning each of the plaintiffs. She repeatedly identified plaintiffs by name, and her audience understood the defamatory statements to refer specifically to the plaintiffs. Let me take a break for a minute. This is like the pot calling the kettle black, you know? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. Read's statements were of and concerning each of the... Okay. She repeatedly identified plaintiffs by name, and her audience understood the defamatory statements to refer specifically to the plaintiffs. The defamatory statements were published to third parties, including Kearney's hundreds of thousands of followers across multiple social media platforms, blog readers, podcast listeners, and television viewers. Just one second, I need to refill my water. And it goes in the McAlberts, do you? Ever. In all his times of quote unquote harassing them, I don't think he ever threatened them with physical violence. And remember when he and Meredith came out of, was it McCarthy's or the waterfall? And they had to walk in front of D&E Pizza to get to their car, and the whole lot of them came out and started harassing him and threatening him, knocked his phone out of his hand, took his phone, threatened to, Chris Albert threatened to kick his ass up and down the sidewalk. I mean, is that the action of people that are afraid of Aidan Kearney? Did they seem afraid to you? And whatever happened to Chris Albert being charged with wiretapping when he was found to be not only video recording people in front of his pizza shop, but also audio recording them. People that had no idea. Yeah, they saw the security cameras, but they didn't know that they were being listened to. And nothing ever came of that, right? I mean, why? The laws only pertain to when it's fits them to hold it against Aidan Kearney and the Karen Read supporters. It doesn't apply to the McAlberts. Why not? I mean, let's. So, I mean, these are not actions of people that are afraid of somebody. Just saying. Number 152 reads, defamatory statements have injured the plaintiffs' reputations and images and have exposed the plaintiffs to public and private hatred, contempt, and ridicule. They've done that to themselves, I gotta tell you. These false publications have caused the plaintiffs to sustain actual and substantial damages. Read, did they lose their houses? Did they lose their businesses? Did they lose their jobs? Did they lose their 401ks? They probably don't have any because, like I said, Chris Albert owes the IRS some ungodly amount, and he's been sued by multiple creditors for not paying his bills. But did they lose their cars? Did they lose anything except for a dog? And that was by their hands. No. So what have they lost? What damages have they suffered? Read public. They've got a lot of balls to complain about suffering substantial damages when you look at what Karen Read lost because of them. And they're not one, but two persecutions of her. Read published her outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies about the plaintiffs negligently with knowledge that the statements were false or with reckless disregard as to whether or not they were true. These acts of Defendant Read resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. Count 2, defamation and defamation per se as to Defendant Kearney. Paragraphs 1 through 116 above are incorporated and realleged as if fully set forth herein. In repeatedly publishing false statements asserting or reasonably understood to be asserting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of John O'Keefe and a cover-up of their purported role in that murder, Kearney published numerous defamatory statements. Kearney's statements were false. The plaintiffs did not murder John O'Keefe and did not participate in any conspiracy to murder O'Keefe, did not engage in any cover-up of O'Keefe's death, and did not frame Karen Read for murder. Kearney knew or had reason to know his statements were false because A, he received his information exclusively from Read and her legal team, who were motivated to deflect blame from Read. B, he made no independent journalistic effort to verify the accuracy of the murder accusations before publishing them. Isn't he the one that found Lucky through his independent journalistic effort? He's the one that found Lucky. He's the one that tried to find out who was driving that Ford Edge that Lucky saw in front of the 34 Fairview. So for them to say that he didn't do any Read and lied about their relationship to conceal the source of his information. No, he lied about their relationship because he knew that everybody would assume that they were working together, and that wasn't a good look. But there's nothing illegal of them working together anyway. She can talk to whoever she wants, and so can her lawyers. There was no order to abstain from talking to media. These publications were not only individually defamatory, but also part of a continuous course of conduct, starting in 2023 and continuing through today, stating, asserting, implying, and suggesting that the plaintiffs were responsible for the murder of O'Keefe and engaged in a cover-up by, in part, framing Karen Read for O'Keefe's death. And I'm going to say one more time, she has scientific proof that she did not kill John O'Keefe. They've proven through science, and there are expert witnesses that say that John O'Keefe was not struck by a car and John O'Keefe did not strike her car. So there's only one other option for how he was killed, and that was inside 34 Fairview. So they're pretty certain that somebody in that house did it, just as everybody else in the community knows that somebody in that house did it. Nobody knows who it was, and I'm sure it was an accident, but the fact that they covered it up makes it murder. But she can say, I've been proven not to have killed him. Can you say that? I mean, I don't think so. Unless you have some scientific proof that none of us know about. The statements contained in Kearney's campaign of harassment and abuse constitute defamation per se. The harmful nature of the defamatory statements is self-evident. The defamatory statements implicate the plaintiffs in heinous criminal conduct. Statements implicate the plaintiffs in heinous criminal conduct, period. False implications of criminal conduct constitute classic defamation per se. Kearney's statements were of and concerning each of the plaintiffs. He repeatedly identified plaintiffs by name, and his audiences understood the defamatory statements to refer specifically to the plaintiffs. The defamatory statements were published to third parties, including Kearney's hundreds of thousands of followers across multiple social media platforms, blog readers, podcast listeners, and television viewers. Kearney made these defamatory statements in an effort to increase his viewership and to profit financially. Kearney's defamatory publications readily identified the plaintiffs to hundreds of thousands of people. Well, so you've got some notoriety too through it. Kearney's defamatory publications were broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people. Kearney's defamatory publications have injured the plaintiffs' reputations and images and have exposed the plaintiffs to public and private hatred, contempt, and ridicule. Those false publications have caused the plaintiffs to sustain actual and substantial damages. In light of his prior experience with similar sorts of negligent, reckless, and false statements, Kearney knew that his publications would cause the plaintiffs to suffer harassment and potential violence. I don't think they've had any potential violence. They're the ones that purported potential violence on him and Meredith when they left the waterfall. Kearney broadcasts his outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies about the plaintiffs negligently, with knowledge that the statements were false or with reckless disregard as to whether or not they were true. These acts of defendant Kearney resulted in damages to the plaintiffs. Count 3, aiding and abetting defamation and defamation per se, as to Karen Read. Paragraphs 1 through 116, as well as paragraphs 126 through 138 above, are incorporated and realleged as if fully set forth herein. Defendant Karen Read knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and maliciously aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tortuous conduct of defendant Kearney things. Read continuously and intentionally provided defendant Kearney with non-public and or confidential information about her criminal case and the plaintiffs. Whether directly or through an intermediary to direct, assist, and encourage defendant Kearney's tortuous conduct. As a direct and proximate result of defendant Read's wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above and are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages from defendant Read. Count 4, intentional infliction of emotional distress as to defendant Read. It says the same thing about the fucking paragraphs. In engaging in her campaign of outrageous and false statements about the plaintiffs, Read intended to inflict emotional distress or knew or should have known that emotional distress was the likely result of her conduct. They don't seem too much to be emotionally distressed. I mean, Jennifer McCabe was stalking Aidan Kearney at one point, wasn't she? She was following him around town. Is that the actions of somebody that's afraid of him? No. She was recording him, remember? Read's conduct was extreme and outrageous. Read's conduct was extreme and outrageous because she orchestrated a coordinated campaign to falsely accuse the plaintiffs of murder and conspiracy to frame her, knowing these accusations were false. Read deliberately used an intermediary and encrypted communications to funnel false statements to Kearney for maximum public dissemination. Hired a private investigator previously associated with Harvey Weinstein to confront plaintiffs, and celebrated the destruction of plaintiffs' reputations while monetizing the resulting publicity. Read's conduct exceeded all bounds of decency because she knowingly destroyed the reputations and lives of innocent people to deflect attention away from her own culpability in John O'Keefe's death. Read's conduct was the cause of the plaintiff's distress. The emotional distress sustained by the plaintiffs was severe. As a direct and proximate result of Read's conduct, the plaintiffs suffered severe emotional distress, including but not limited to anxiety, fear for their personal safety and the safety of their families, damage to personal and professional relationships, and the inability to participate in normal daily activities without fear of harassment or confrontation. The defendant's conduct was so outrageous in character and so extreme in degree as to go beyond all possible bounds of decency and to be regarded as atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized community. The plaintiffs have suffered actual and substantial damages as a direct and proximate result of Read's conduct. Count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress as to Defendant Kearney. Says the same thing about the paragraphs. In broadcasting his campaign of outrageous and false statements about the plaintiffs, Kearney intended to inflict emotional distress or knew or should have known that emotional distress was the likely result of his conduct. Kearney's conduct was extreme and outrageous. Kearney's conduct was extreme and outrageous because he, A, published over 545 blog posts and countless videos falsely accusing plaintiffs of murder. B, stalked and confronted plaintiffs at their homes, workplaces, and children's extracurricular activities. C, publicly released plaintiffs' personal identifying information, including social security numbers, home addresses, and phone numbers. D, organized mobs to gather outside plaintiffs' homes. E, called plaintiffs derogatory names, including quote-unquote cop killer, pig, and horse face. F, left harassing voicemails for plaintiffs and their family members, and G, encouraged his followers to harass and confront plaintiffs. Kearney's sustained multi-year harassment campaign designed to torment the plaintiffs and profit from their misery constitutes conduct that exceeds all bounds of decency. So, Kearney's conduct was the cause of the plaintiff's distress. The emotional distress sustained by the plaintiffs was severe. As a direct and proximate result of Kearney's conduct, the plaintiffs suffered severe emotional distress, including but not limited to anxiety, fear for their personal safety and the safety of their families, depression, humiliation, damage to personal and professional relationships, and the inability to participate in normal daily activities without fear of harassment or confrontation. I would have to say that their professional relationships probably were already hurting once word got out that Chris Albert killed an exchange student back in the 90s or late 80s or 90s. Rear-ended him on the freeway, killed him, and left the scene. probably because he was intoxicated, turned himself in 30 hours later after he had time to sober up, and only got 6 months of community service. So, or 6 months in a work farm or something like that. I think a lot of people lost respect for him at that point. This was just the icing on the cake. Kearney's conduct was so outrageous in character and so extreme in degree as to go beyond all possible bounds of decency and to be regarded as atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized community. In light of his prior experience with similar types of negligent, false, and reckless statements, Defendant Kearney knew that his publications would cause the plaintiffs to suffer harassment and potential violence. The plaintiffs have suffered actual and substantial damages as a direct and proximate result of Kearney's conduct. Then count 6, aiding and abetting intentional infliction of emotional distress as to Defendant Read. Defendant Read knowingly, recklessly, and negligently, and with legal malice, aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tertious conduct of Defendant Kearney against the plaintiffs described above, thereby substantially assisting and encouraging such conduct. Among other things alleged herein, Read continuously and intentionally provided Defendant Kearney with non-public and or confidential information about her criminal case and the plaintiffs, whether directly or through an intermediary, in an effort to assist and encourage Defendant Kearney's tortious conduct. Then it says the same thing about, as a direct and proximate result, they have suffered, they have been injured and damaged as described above, and they are entitled to recover compensatory and punitive damages from Read. Count 7, negative infliction of emotional distress as to Read. Read's campaign of outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies created an unreasonable risk of causing the plaintiffs severe emotional distress. Well, I've just got to ask one thing. What do you think her being persecuted twice did to her as far as emotional distress goes? I'm thinking it probably outweighed theirs significantly. The plaintiff's distress was foreseeable. The plaintiff's emotional distress was severe enough that it resulted in illness or bodily harm, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, and other physical manifestations of severe psychological trauma. Are you sure that's not guilt? Are you sure you're not just feeling guilty and that's why you can't sleep? Reads out, if you have any kind of morals or any kind of signs of being a human being, you would not be able to sleep after doing what you've done. Not only to John O'Keefe, but to Karen Read. Read's outrageous, cruel, and malicious conduct was the cause of the plaintiff's distress. The plaintiffs have suffered actual and substantial damages as a direct and proximate result of the defendant's conduct. Count 8, negligent infliction of emotional distress as to Kearney. It says the same thing as it did for Karen about sleeplessness. Kearney's outrageous and cruel and malicious conduct was they suffered some actual and substantial damages as a direct result of his conduct. Count 9, aiding and abetting negligent infliction of emotional distress as to Defendant Read. Did they each have this many counts in the last one? I don't think so, did they? I don't remember which ones they had, but I don't think there was this many. So they did amend it in that sense. But anyway, let's go on. The paragraph thing. Defendant Read knowingly, recklessly, negligently, and with legal malice aided and abetted the foreseeable, wrongful, and tortious conduct of Defendant Kearney against the plaintiffs described above. Among other things alleged herein, Read continuously and intentionally provided Kearney with confidential information about her case through an intermediary or directly. As a result, as direct and proximate result of defendants' wrongful conduct, the plaintiffs have been injured and damaged as described above, and they deserve to recover compensatory and punitive damages. Count 10, civil conspiracy as to Read and Kearney. And it says the same thing about the paragraphs above. The defendants, acting in concert with each other, conspired by concerted action to pursue a campaign of defamation, harassment, and abuse, and intimidation, resulting in severe emotional distress on the plaintiffs, which included numerous unlawful acts or lawful acts by unlawful means, as described above. The defendants formed an agreement, whether express or implied, to defame the plaintiffs, and through their intentional, reckless, and negligent conduct, to inflict severe emotional distress on them. This agreement is evidenced by A. Read's use of intermediaries and encrypted communications to funnel information and false statements to Kearney. She used an encrypted communications to communicate with Jackson also, so how come you're not suing him? Kearney's admission that he received information and direction from Read and her legal team. He didn't receive direction, he received information. C. Read's praise and encouragement of Kearney's defamatory publications. D. Their coordinated timing of publications to coincide with court proceedings. E. Their shared financial and strategic interests in the defamation campaign. They make it sound like Karen Read made money off this. She didn't. Aidan Kearney made money through all the work he did. He worked hard and tirelessly, and so he earned every penny he got. But Read didn't make any money off this. F. Read's and Kearney's joint efforts to conceal the relationship from the public. In furtherance of their scheme to defame, harass, abuse, and intimidate the plaintiffs, the defendants committed overt acts and were otherwise willful participants in joint activity. The defendant's misconduct, my eyes are watering. The defendant's misconduct was undertaken with malice, willfulness, recklessness, and negligent indifference to the rights of others. These acts of the defendants resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. Count 11, Massachusetts Unfair Trade Practices Act, as to Kearney. And says the same thing about the paragraphs. Kearney, in the course of trade or commerce, unethically, oppressively, immorally, and unscrupulously developed, propagated, and disseminated outrageous and malicious lies about the plaintiffs and their family members, and he did so for profit. Kearney operates a commercial enterprise through which he monetizes content by selling subscriptions, merchandise featuring the plaintiffs' names and likenesses, and advertising, and by soliciting donations. Kearney's defamatory statements about the plaintiffs were integral in his commercial business model and was designed to attract paying customers and generate revenue. Their campaign of lies, abuse, and harassment was a deceptive and unfair practice and offended public policy. Kearney's conduct constitutes unfair methods of competition and unfair too. Kearney's reprehensible conduct caused substantial injury to the plaintiffs that is not outweighed by any countervailing benefits to consumers or competition, and that the plaintiffs themselves could not have reasonably avoided Kearney's monetization of defamatory content about private individuals constitutes an unfair business practice. So are they going to say they want part of his revenue from all the sales? Is that what they're going to go for? That'll be interesting. Plaintiffs are consumers, and Kearney's actions caused them to suffer significant damages to inter alia, money, or property. Kearney's conduct was a foreseeable cause of and substantial factor causing the plaintiff's injury. Kearney broadcast his outrageous, cruel, and malicious lies about the plaintiffs negligently or with knowledge that the statements were false or with reckless disregard as to whether or not they were true. Kearney's conduct was willful and knowing, entitling the plaintiffs to an award of double or treble damages. Is that supposed to be triple? Double or triple damages pursuant to MGL 93A subsection 9. Kearney deliberately built a commercial enterprise around defaming the plaintiffs, knowing his statements were false or acting with reckless disregard for their truth or falsity. These acts of the defendant resulted in damage to the plaintiffs. Plaintiffs, through their counsel, served a demand letter on Kearney at least 30 days prior to the filing of the original complaint pursuant to MGL 93A, detailing the underlying facts of this cause of action with reasonable specificity. I hate that word. Request for relief. This will be interesting. Wherefore, for the reasons set forth above, the plaintiffs respectfully request that the court grant the following relief. A. Enter judgment in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. B. Award damages in an amount to be determined at trial, but to exceed at least this court's jurisdictional limit, including double or treble. Treble, is that the right word, or am I just dumb? Double or treble damages pursuant to Chapter 93A. C. Award punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. D. Award the plaintiffs reasonable attorney's fees, cost, expenses of this litigation, and prejudgment interest. E. Award any such other legal, equitable, and declaratory relief as the court deems just and proper. Roman numeral 7. Jury demand. Plaintiffs demand a trial by jury on all issues so triable. Dated in Boston, Massachusetts on this 5th day of June, 2026. Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, and Brian Higgins. So there is that. Phew, that was a long one. I just went balls to the walls and read the shit out of it, so I hope you're able to keep up. I didn't want to have to take a break, and I took a little break, but I didn't want to have to take a big break, and I didn't want to have to go do a three-parter, because I do have to go back to work tomorrow. So, yeah. So we just put the pedal to the metal and rammed right through it, so I'm sorry if it was hard to follow. Basically, they want a shit ton of money. I'm surprised they didn't ask for the revenue that he made, or the profit he made off of the merchandise that depicted them. That really surprises me. I kind of expected that, but I don't know. I guess they're never failed to surprise us. So, I will keep you posted when I hear more. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment. Like I said before, I'm open to constructive criticism. Don't beat me down, be humane about it. This is, like I said, I've never done anything like this before, so I'm willing to take constructive criticism as long as you don't throw me in the fire. Be polite about it and be patient with me. That's all I ask. So, again, like, subscribe, comment, and until next time, ciao for now.